two pistols. So Fred, it took him a minute to figure it out, but then once he does, he just lunges at Otto, and Otto, of course, just starts firing both pistols right into Fred. Just gonna put my phone on silent. I don't want it to mess up the video. Welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, we like to talk about true crime and strange, spooky stories. Now, if you are a returning subscriber, you're a real one. Now, before we get into any of the stories, all right? If you're a good person, if you woke up feeling blessed, if you woke up and you think, you know what, I'm gonna be a millionaire one day, I want you to hit that like button. If you know that you're gonna make some money in the future, that you're important, hit that subscribe button. That's all I'm saying. If you know these things, like and subscribe. All right, let's get into the story. On August 22nd, 1922, shots rang out at a very, very, very nice home in Beverly Hills, the home of Fred and Dolly Oesterreich. After hearing these shots, the neighbors called the police, the authorities right away, and once they got there, the police walked in and they saw that the house was completely trashed, the entire house. Walking in, they found Fred dead right on the floor, and right next to him were 3 .25 caliber shell casings. Now, since this is a murder scene, they have weapons out, they're clearing the entire first floor, there's no one down there. Then they hear screaming coming from upstairs, so they rush upstairs looking around, and still they find no one. Once they're upstairs, they're trying to figure out where the screaming came from, so they're still weapons drawn, they're walking around room to room, then they hear the screaming again. So they go back to a first room that they look in, and they see or hear that there's someone trapped inside of a closet inside of that room. Once upstairs, the police ask, "Who are you?" She says, "I'm Dolly. I'm okay, but I'm trapped in this closet." When the police hear that, they continue to make sure that the entire upstairs is clear, and then they go back to her and say, "Where's the key? Do you know where the key is?" So before they start breaking down the doors to this closet, they do a quick search just to maybe try and find the key. And sure enough, they find it across the hall in another room, just in a drawer somewhere. So they grab the key, unlock it, and let her out. Now that she's out, right, they're like, "Okay, what happened? How did you get in here?" She's like, "I don't know. I was in here just hanging up clothes in this closet or putting things away, and then I heard a commotion downstairs. But when I turned to go downstairs, I see the door swinging shut because somebody was shutting it, and then she hears it locked." She said it happened so fast that she didn't get to see who it was even swinging the door, so she couldn't give a description. Now the police are they don't really know what to make of this. They are wondering, is it just one person? Did the one person just have the fight and kill Fred downstairs and then run upstairs and just hurry up and push her in the closet? And if that's the case, why not kill her too? Or were there two people? Was one person downstairs and then another one upstairs to take care of Dolly? Or maybe there was like a whole group of people. So they're really unsure about what's going on right now. Even though the entire house was just ransacked, and everything was just everywhere, the only thing that was missing, according to Dolly, was the diamond encrusted watch that her husband Fred would always wear. That was the only thing that was missing. Another thing that was a little off was, why was this murderer carrying a .25 caliber pistol? Now, a .25 caliber is something that's very small. Normally you would see that in a woman's purse, or a woman would carry something like that just because it's just smaller, a little bit easier to handle. Now, of course, police will do an investigation, talk to the neighbors, whatever, just to see how their relationship was. The neighbors would say that their relationship was a little rocky, was ups and downs, but even that night they had a really big argument. But even with that being said, the police were like, even if they had an argument, it's just impossible for someone to kill somebody and then run upstairs, lock yourself in a closet, and then place the key in an entirely different room. It's just impossible. So even with this little bit of information, they dig into Dolly's past just to figure out a little bit more about her. What they find out is that she was born in Germany, and then before the turn of the century, she moved to Wisconsin, and then that's when she met Fred and they married. Fred was 3 years older. He was ambitious, he was driven. Even though Fred was ambitious, he was also a raging alcoholic, and he was also very violent. But even with that, they still stayed married, and they just pursued their life together. Fred would put his brains to use and just develop massive textile industries, gathering more wealth. But even with that, he was gone a lot, so their marriage was slowly deteriorating because she was lonely and Fred was gone all the time and he was mean. Later on, they moved to Southern California, and neighbors would say even though they were very new to the area, they quickly noticed that they would argue all the time, and even in public they would bicker about just the smallest things to bigger arguments about who knows. So with this information, police looked to see if maybe Dolly was unfaithful because Fred was gone so much. Maybe she had a lover, or maybe that could be some type of motive, but they looked high and low as a bunch of neighbors and just locals, and they couldn't find anything. So even though they were miserable together, they were both faithful to each other. Suspicion grew around Dolly, but even though people were talking, you know how locals, they just talk, they couldn't really pin her to anything. So now that Dolly is free from her loveless marriage, she gets into a relationship with Herman Shapiro. Herman Shapiro is the estate lawyer of her husband's $1 million empire. But just like her late husband, Herman was always gone all the time working, so she began to get lonely again, and she went out to get another boyfriend, a gentleman by the name of Roy Klum. A year after the death of Fred, an officer stops by Dolly and her new boyfriend Herman's house just to do a check-in because he was still a little suspicious, but he just wanted to check in. So they have nothing to hide. They let him in. He's walking around room to room, and he notices a watch, a very specific watch, a diamond encrusted watch, a watch that Dolly said was stolen, the only thing stolen during that murder a few years back. Herman quickly jumps to Dolly's defense, like, hey, I know what this looks like. I know that Dolly said that there was a watch missing, and this is very similar to the watch she said, but in actuality, it wasn't missing at all. In fact, Dolly said she found it a little bit later and it was stuck under a couch cushion. So that explains the watch, detective. The captain is not believing this at all, not one bit. So as soon as he leaves the house, he immediately confronts Dolly, and she's like, yes, I found it and I didn't tell you guys because I just didn't think it was important. I just didn't think it was important. Something's a little fishy going on. Something's not smelling right, if I have something to say about it. Once this new information came out that the watch wasn't stolen, that Dolly actually had it and now her new boyfriend has it, the newspapers go crazy. They start putting this new plot twist to the story of a murder that happened a little while ago. Maybe Dolly is the person, who knows? Maybe she did it, maybe she didn't. We're gonna figure it out though. You know how newspapers do. With the newspapers, with these headlines and everything going crazy, Dolly's side guy, Roy Klum, comes forward. He's like, hey, Dolly made me take her .25 caliber handgun and get rid of it in the La Brea tar pits. Remember that .25 caliber we were talking about? But before they could even go and get this .25 caliber gun, another neighbor comes up to the police and like, hey, yeah, Dolly made me, get rid of this .25 caliber pistol as well, and I buried it in my backyard. So now we have two .25 caliber pistols. So the police immediately go out and they retrieve both weapons, but they were so badly rusted that they really couldn't tell if they were the murder weapons or if they weren't. And then when they asked Dolly, Dolly's like, oh yeah, I had them, but because of the circumstances on how my husband was murdered, it just felt awkward having them at the house, so I just asked some friends to get rid of them for me. Which is weird. Why not just get rid of them yourself? I don't understand. You can't throw something in the tar pits? Just throw it in the ocean. Or bury it yourself. Like, why do you have to? I don't know. That's weird to me. The police weren't buying this. So in July of 1923, they arrested Dolly for the murder. But even though she was arrested, the circumstances and the facts of the story hadn't changed. So it was still physically impossible for Dolly to lock herself in the room. So investigators and police officers still rummaging, trying to dig up any type of dirt to link her to this crime, but nothing. They couldn't find anything, really. But since they couldn't find anything, they had to drop the charges and Dolly was released. So 7 years go by and Dolly and her boyfriend Herman break up. And as soon as they break up, Herman goes straight to the police and like, you know what? I wasn't being 100% truthful. In fact, I know a lot more than what I led you to believe. He said, in fact, if you come to my office right now, I have someone here who can explain the entire story of what happened that night. So the police rush all the way over to Herman's office and walk inside, and then they see a man that they had never seen before. His name was Otto Sanhuber. Now, Otto was a sewing machine repairman slash dime store fiction writer. So he wrote small novels, pretty much. That's what a dime store fiction writer is. Did you pay a dime for? Just to give you like context to this story. So Otto was placed around Fred a decade before the murder. So he was only about 17 years old. So Dolly complains to Fred one day that her sewing machine is broken and she needs it fixed. So Fred goes and talks to Otto because he knows that he repairs sewing machines. Talks to Otto and asks Otto to go over there and repair his wife's sewing machine. Otto's only like 17 at this point. Now Dolly knew that Fred was going to send Otto, and she liked Otto. So when Otto came over, all she had on was just stockings, a silk robe, and some perfume. That's it. Dolly's like, hey, I'm about to get this right now, and you gonna be the one to give it to me. Because she liked him. She thought he was good looking. Kind of pedophile. He was only like 17. So after this started Otto and Dolly's affair. It started off pretty typical, meeting in hotels, but then this became to be a little bit too much. I guess they were just getting nervous that they were going to get caught. So what they did was Otto would come over once Fred left. So Otto started living in the house when Fred wasn't there. When Fred would leave, Otto would come, and then he would stay and eat, but he would live in the attic. But the neighbors kept seeing Otto coming and going, and they got a little curious, so they were asking, like, who is that man that keeps coming over? So Dolly was like, oh, that's just my vagabond half brother. He just needs a little help. That's all he's doing. Don't worry about him. So instead of cutting it off, Dolly suggested that, hey, we have this secret compartment in the attic, so why don't you live there? So this young man, having no friends or family who would miss him, quit his job and moved into that attic space. So once moved in, they began some type of regular schedule. Once Fred would leave, Otto would come down, he would make bathtub gin, he would clean, he would eat some food, and then once Fred came back, he would go back into his hiding spot and just relax for the rest of the night or the day. Now, Fred, not being a dumb man, started noticing, like, hey, we're running out of food faster. I'm missing a cigar. I'm hearing strange noises at the end of the night. But Dolly was like, hey, you're just overreacting. Maybe you're overworked. Don't worry about it. It's all in your head. So over the next 5 years, they lived in 4 different houses. And every time they moved to a different house, Fred noticed the same things, that food missing, noises, cigars, or like clothing, whatever it was missing. But Dolly kept reassuring him, it's just all in your head. And he believed it. So in 1819, Fred told Dolly that he wanted to move to Southern California. So Dolly found a house specifically with an attic. Once they found one and they paid for it, she sent Otto ahead to go ahead and just get in the attic, get comfortable, and we'll be right behind you. So the night before Fred was murdered, Otto had been living with his family for almost a decade. So one night, Fred and Dolly get into a heated argument, but this seems like it's a little bit more heated than the normal ones. So Otto, being nervous that his lover is going to die or be physically harmed, he jumps out of the attic with 2 .25 caliber pistols, runs down and confronts Fred. Like, what's up, boy? Game time. Now Fred's just completely freaked out. Like, what are you doing here? Like, you quit this job maybe almost 10 years ago, now you're just in front of my face right now with these 2 pistols. So Fred, it took him a minute to figure it out, but then once he does, he just lunges at Otto, and Otto of course just starts firing both pistols right into Fred. Now Dolly knows that the police are going to be there any minute because of all the gunshots that the neighbors probably heard, and they did hear. So she hatched this plan. Dolly started rummaging through the house, just knocking everything down, making it look like a robbery. Then she tells Otto to lock her in the closet and then go and stay in the attic until the police get here. So when the police got there, Otto was just in the attic, hunched over with the police right under him. He was just sitting there, not making a sound, probably scared to death, not saying anything. So once all of this blew over, Otto moved in with Dolly. Now this was before Shapiro. So Otto moved in with Dolly, but instead of having a normal relationship, Dolly made him stay in the attic again, even though it's just them two. She's like, go back in the attic. You know what time it is. Go back in the attic, boy. I'm paying bills around here. But then a year later, after them living together for just that year, when Dolly was arrested for having the friends bury the 2 guns for that little bit of time that we just spoke about, that's when Otto was forced to come out of the closet. no pun intended, because he wasn't gay. Otto was forced to come out of the attic, not closet. Now, while she was arrested, before Otto was, I guess, forced to move out, she begged Shapiro, her boyfriend, at that time, to go get groceries and take them to Otto. But she didn't say that Otto was her boyfriend. She still kept up with the same lie that Otto was her vagabond half-brother. Can you just take these groceries and give it to him? So Shapiro did just that. He got the groceries and then walked into the house, walked into the bedroom, and then knocked on the ceiling where the attic was. And Otto came out, but he was just so starved for human interaction, he broke down and told Shapiro the entire story. Now that I'm thinking about it, I don't think that Otto was mentally 100%. I don't think he had a full box of crayons, if you know what I mean. I think he was a few colors short. He wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed, is what I'm trying to say. Once Shapiro heard the entire story, he didn't tell Otto to go to the police. He said, just leave, just get away from here and just go live your own life. And that's what Otto did. He became a janitor and he got married. Now this secret was held, okay? It was locked down tight, until Dolly and Shapiro broke up. Now once they broke up, Shapiro was mad for whatever reason, went straight to the police, told them what happened. Once the police knew the information, they arrested Otto and Dolly, and they deemed this case the Batman case because Otto was in the attic like a bat in a cave. That's what this was, way before like Batman the superhero. He was the first Batman. Now Otto would have been convicted of manslaughter, but the statute of limitations was up, so he was just let free. Now Dolly was allowed to walk away free as well because the jury was hung on her conspiracy to commit murder charges, so she was free to go as well. After the trial, Otto went on about his life and pretty much just disappeared, and Dolly stayed in LA where she died 2 weeks after getting married at the age of 80. So that is it for this case. If you made it all the way to the end of the video, I really appreciate it because you're a real one. Again, if you're a good person, you know you have some money coming in, you know you're gonna be a millionaire one day, go ahead and hit that like button and hit that subscribe button for good luck. That is it, and I will see you on another video.